back in October, Sheryl Swoopes, one of the top women's players, period, went on the Gilbert Arenas podcast and was critical of Caitlin Clark, who just set the all-time women's scoring record, and had comments about, well, yeah, she's likely to do it, but she's going to use the COVID year, so she's had the extra year. She is older. She's 25, competed against 20-year-olds, saying that she takes 40 shots per game, so on and so on. And, well, she came back and said, and props to Sheryl Swoopes, 2 nights ago, she was on the call of a college basketball game and said, hey, recently, Angel Reese reached out to her about 2 weeks ago and said, hey, I'd love to connect with Caitlin if we can make that happen. Angel Reese did that after Caitlin Clark set the scoring record and had a conversation where she more or less admitted that she made a mistake with those comments. Said that she has nothing but respect for Caitlin Clark, that, in fact, she did it during her senior year, during 4 years, and not the extra year. Loves what she's doing on the court and off the court for women's basketball. And I say props to Sheryl Swoopes for coming back around and admitting this, and also not making it about her. Because when she was asked what details of what the conversation was like, Chad, she says, oh, well, I'll leave it up to her if she wants to unveil that, but I'll keep that private for now. That's how you handle something.
Yeah.
And she's right. I mean, she's the all-time leading scorer, and then she's gone on now to surpass Sheryl Sanders for the top salesperson involving college athletes right now, according to Fanatics.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've all said something stupid or had a bad take before, or, you do this long enough especially, and you don't have to do this job at all to have said something stupid or done something stupid. Just own it and move forward, and it's not that big of a deal. You really diffuse a situation a lot better if you say, yeah, I was wrong about this, was wrong about that. I've watched this person play a lot more now, and guess what? I was wrong. She's great. It's not going to take a COVID year to do it. She's going to shatter that record in a COVID year if she decides to come back to Iowa next year to exercise that extra COVID year. Now, there are going to have to be some delineations from previous records based on this COVID extra year. I do think we need to at least put an asterisk next to some things. Not Caitlin Clark, because she did it before the COVID year. But if records start to shatter because someone is in college for 6 years and they get that COVID year, we need to look at that just like we look at pre-freshman not being able to play and post-freshman being able to play, a la Pistol Pete Maravich at LSU, and all of his records where he averaged 44 points a game in 3 years because he couldn't play as a freshman. He lit up the freshman games, the freshman team, when he was a freshman at LSU. So we do need to look at some of those things statistically with the record books. But statistically, what matters is she's the leading scorer in the history of women's college basketball, and Caitlin Clark is a show. She's incredible. She's fun to watch. She's easy to root for, and it's all positivity when you watch her play. Now, I know Jay Williams and some others have said things like, well, show me a championship. That's how I deem the great one. She needs to win a college championship if she's going to be truly great. That's a big expectation to put on one player on a team to go win it all, but she was there a year ago in the national championship game. She could get there again. So I want to see that happen.
They don't play defense. Have you seen these final scores?
I don't.
I mean, it's crazy.
It's fun. Name another player on Iowa's roster, other than Caitlin Clark.
Correct.
I mean,
no doubt.
Again, watch their offense. It is Caitlin Clark handles the ball, and she'll drive, and she might kick it out to a wide-open three-point shooter who's just set at the three-point line, ready to shoot, and maybe they make it, maybe they don't. That's Iowa's entire offense is Caitlin Clark. So I'm not going to say she has to win a national title to be considered one of the greatest or the greatest women's basketball players of all time that we've seen in college. But I'm rooting for that to happen. I'd like to see if she can go out and single-handedly, really, when you think about her supporting cast, go win a championship.
I can't think, so if it's not her, who is it? I don't think she has to have a championship to be any more well-known than what she already is.
Well, look, I think
that's the
we
point.
Can.
I don't think it changes her spot on the hierarchy of greatest players. Even if we're hearing that from guys who have played the game, Sure, you've got titles.
Well, it's funny. I searched exactly what Jay Williams said, and the first thing that pops up is Jay Williams' crush for his absurd Caitlin Clark isn't great take.
Yeah.
He said she's not great because
of the title?
He defines greatness as like Michael Jordan.
Leading to a championship.
I think we're mincing words because she is great.
Of course.
Reggie Miller as a player, to me, he was great.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer. He's not the greatest of all time. Like, there's a difference between the two. Is Jay Williams saying, I can't say she's the greatest of all time because she has no titles to her name yet? I mean, I guess I'm willing to listen to that debate, but to say she's not great is just, we're really getting deep into the word great. And your definition of great is just the greatest ever. Something can be great without being the greatest of all time.
I also want to hear the nuance of the conversation and what he was set up with, or the conversation of someone else on the panel that he was discussing this with. He may have been responding to GOAT.
Yeah,
someone else could have called her the GOAT.
Well, here's the quote. Asked about her greatness, he said, she's probably the most prolific scorer the game of basketball has ever seen. I am unwilling to say that she is great yet. I think she is Steph Curry of women's college basketball. By the way, Steph Curry's won 4 titles, but
great.
Neither here nor there.
Right.
I think she has changed the dynamics of the way the game is played. I think the way she plays, the pizzazz, is like she's probably the most prolific scorer the game of basketball has ever seen. I am unwilling, and maybe it's the Kobe mentorship around me, to say that she is great yet. I think she is the most prolific scorer the game has ever seen. I hold great or the levels of immortality or the pantheon to when you win championships. Or the pantheon to which you win championships. I'm just being honest. That's me. Diana Taurasi, when you win 3 consecutive titles, 2-time National Player of the Year, it has to culminate with a chip. Diana Taurasi was surrounded by greatness, being coached for Gino Auriemma at UConn also.
But
so
we
that's
also
very
knew,
different.
To your point, though, we knew several other players on that roster during that run.
Yeah.
And at Iowa, what? There's
Put
her.
Caitlin Clark on UConn at any point, and they're probably winning 2 or 3 national titles.
And she's still the face of UConn.
She has transformed Iowa women's basketball forever.
But
as a one-player show with not a great supporting cast around her. But
is she the all-time leading scorer at UConn doing that? No.
I think Jay Williams is trying to think too much about the word great. It's not greatest ever. And great can extend past 2 or 3 players.
Yes.
So she's a great player. I don't understand how this is difficult to assess her greatness as great shooter, great for the game of women's basketball, transcendent for Iowa women's basketball. In a word, great. She's great. That's easy to say. And Jay Williams probably should just say that.
In the world of NIL, Sheryl Sanders is great. He and his brother Shiloh, along with the older brother Deion Jr., they bought a home for Deion Sanders in the Boulder area. Have you seen this? 17,000 square feet. They bought this home for their father in a video that they posted on social media. This was a couple of weeks ago, I believe. Chad, do
you think that does well to recruit to Colorado?
I mean, Deion does that on his own. Deion,
I know,
is
but like when
flash.
it's your kids doing it, like I see that, and if I'm a player thinking about Colorado, that turns me off. When it's the 2 coaches' kids that were already rich to begin with that are buying a house for their dad on video, like I see that and I think,
acres.
I'm not going to play for this dude.
Chad, you looked at property today. This is 33 acres.
Yeah, I looked at 12 acres. I'm telling you that the area I looked in, probably not as expensive as Boulder, Colorado, wherever they got this 33 acres. Maybe it is.
$7.2 million home.
Unbelievable. Again, though, I just look at all this. There's cracks in the facade of Deion and his ego. I saw anonymous, I think it was On3, had an anonymous top recruit talking to an outlet says Deion Sanders turned off multiple people because he's so cocky.
No doubt.
That they're saying, like, I don't think he understands that he's not a great Division I college coach yet because he hasn't done anything at this level yet. And he acts like he's the greatest coach in the history of college football, and that's turning people off. I see that, and I also pair it with his kids buying him a house kids that were already rich because of Deion Sanders' daddy.
We had Deion Jr. on once, and he's got this marketing deal. He's got this clothing line on his own. He called in to defend that. Remember
I'm just
this?
Speaking personally, just like Jay Williams has his own definition of great that no one else has, that apparently includes one or two people, Michael and Kobe, only two that are great.
That's it.
Funniest response I saw, by the way, to Jay Williams is Doug Gottlieb, who says, apparently Larry Bird, not great because he made a national championship game and lost at Indiana State as a player. Not a great college player, though, according to Jay Williams, which is a terrific response. If I'm a top college football player, and I see a video of two kids of the head coach who's wearing jewelry that would give Mr. T a backache during the games, buying him a house, my initial thought is I don't want to consider playing for that program until the kids are gone, because that's just too much for me as a player. Seeing daddy coach two kids of his own and then have that stuff going on.
But see, that's
a weird situation to me.
I think it would, and it has affected the way that they recruit high school. I don't think it affects the transfer portal for him. I think that's been the focus. He's got all these different celebrities on the sideline. I mean, the way you're responding is the way I would respond if I were being recruited. But it's just a different world. It's a different recruiting landscape. It turns off some. But it is like a fly to a light for others.
I don't think I'm putting too much pressure on Deion to say this. He needs to win 8 or 9 games this year.
Hey,
there is so much talk going on, and we have seen it time and time again that you can turn a roster over in the portal quickly.
Yes.
They turned it over where they could win a few games early on and then do nothing.
They also need to turn over some coaches, which they've done. Then they have to prove they can do it.
This last year they did that. They've got a lot of money. They've got, as Hutton said, Colorado is Hollywood on Saturdays with the people they have on the sideline. 8 or 9 wins may be a lot to ask for. They need to go to a bowl or win 7 games this year. Show some legitimate improvement. Even though they're going to be moving conferences, I don't care. Not going to a bowl game in 2 years for Deion Sanders with all the bluster, all the Aflac commercials, all the jewelry, all the talk, everything else, that's unacceptable to me. That is unacceptable, and I would hope Deion Sanders would say the same.
Well,
I think he probably would.
You know my motto here. It's not if you lose, it's how you lose. They could start off the same way they did a year ago. They're going to be on national TV. So they opened up against North Dakota State, but then they have Nebraska, Colorado State, Baylor. And the Colorado State game had both Big Noon Kickoff and College Game Day on campus. They can that 4-game stretch. They can start out in a similar fashion to started. Even though, I mean, if no matter how they finish this past season, they're still going to be nationally relevant and pull massive numbers because of the Hollywood feel to it.
I don't think they didn't hire Deion Sanders just to get TV ratings. They hired him to win too. The winning and the TV ratings are supposed to go hand in hand. He won September. There's no denying it.
And Colorado won because of the ticket sales and where they were versus where they were.
He won September of his first year.
And Colorado won, though, is my point.
And he failed miserably with that team the rest of the way. They lost 46-43 to a terrible Stanford team. They lost 56 to about, not just if you lose, but how you lose. It was 56-14 to Washington State.
Yes.
Last year. They were bad. That's a bad football team. And I'm willing to give him grace because he came in and just set off a bomb in the house and said, everybody get out. I'm going to blow this thing up and start it from scratch.
But I
give them the 1 year, but they need to be better this year.
I mean, they were awful in 2022, what you just said. Then they sold out the season at home. Now they have a wait list that you can join for next year. I mean, and the city itself, we saw the financial numbers. It's crazy.
Yeah, they're winning money-wise. I'm saying for Deion Sanders to be the coach that he espouses to be, it's got to eventually be more about tickets he sells.
Well, sure, but I don't think
they got to win.
But he's not the one saying it's all about tickets. I go back to, I'm surprised, but I can't sit here and say that I disagree with much of anything that he said at a podium this year and how he handled losses. I thought he would handle the loss and the stretch of a bad season worse. And in fact, he reacted in many cases the way I would react, where he felt gutted. He even said, the way they perform. You mentioned some of those final scores. Post game, if you go and watch his pressers, where he sits there and answers every question, he's just as pissed off about that as anyone would be about wins and losses, more than butts and seats. He's still going to be the same sales. He's going to sell the same brand regardless of the score.
Yeah, I think he needs to reconsider that brand if they go 4-8 again this year. Because I don't know that the brand is working with big-time recruits. He got Jordan Seaton, who's a 5-star offensive tackle, to go away from Tennessee and Ohio State and others.
But
he's done moderately well in the portal with volume. I don't know how much quality is coming in the portal. He's getting a lot of guys.
But
fair. He got a lot of guys a year ago.
And the other thing, too, just going back to the Sanders, Shedeur is a legit Power 5 quarterback. I didn't know that where he was playing versus what he was. If they enhance the offensive line, that alone could get them into a bowl.
And it's going to be really hard to do that when you're turning over 5 new offensive linemen every year in the portal. Now, he's going to start a 5-star freshman, probably in Jordan Seaton at left tackle, I would guess. But other than that, it's going to be hard. I mean, they could improve a little bit.
But that's the only way they can improve right now.
They need to improve a lot.
It's hard to improve an O-line out of high school starting freshman.
This goes back to
just body size.
Is it the chicken or the egg? Right? He could have come in with a little bit of humility and said, we probably don't need to kick every player off this team. We're going to need some depth. Started to build through the high school ranks and the portal, not just the portal. Not just came in and said, my way or the highway, I know what's good, you guys suck, get out. And tried to completely flip everything over with the portal. And that bit them as the season went on. Will it bite them again? I don't know. I just know it's very hard to get a good offensive line strictly from the portal. And that's what he's trying to do.
But the only way to flip it and actually have immediate results is that way, especially at those positions up front. And here's the other thing.
Well, you can do it when you have a base.
It bit them in the back end of their schedule where they were taking advantage. I mean, they did go on the road at TCU and win that game.
Yeah.
With that flip.
TCU sucked.
Well,
let's go ahead and say TCU was a
But the players that he replaced were awful.
Yeah.
And he was honest about it, which ties into your commentary on Pitino.
No doubt. But my point is, it's about strategy. Like, that's great if you're going to stand on that, right? Like Eli Drinkwood stands on business.
Right.
If you're going to stand on everybody here sucks, get out. I don't care if you're from the state. I don't care where you're from. I'm going to bring in my own guys. Okay, that works. All right? If you continue to build upon that, I don't know that they have the base down pat this next year from this past year because so many other guys left and so many other things are changing. It's like he's trying to do it again through the portal. And if you do that every year, I don't know that it's going to work. It's going to put butts in seats. It's going to get us talking about it. It's going to get Fox's Big Noon Kickoff there and College Game Day and all these things early in the year. But will it actually be substance or will it just always be style? I don't know. And he's not going to have the benefit of having his son play quarterback for him forever. He's going to have to go find a good quarterback. His son's a very good quarterback. We saw that this past year. That needs an offensive line. He's going to have to go find someone.
It's all based on the perspective and perception of what you expect him to do. At Kentucky, they'll give you an extension for winning 6 games a year and a $50 million buyout. And that's a success.
Well, look, I think he gets an extension if he wins 6 games a year at Colorado. But he's got to get up to that point in the Big 12
But
first.
he went from turning over practically everyone. But what was it? How many scholarship players was he down to? It was 10 or 11, something like that?
It was by his own doing.
Right.
Yes.
But chose to do that and then won 4 games. Compared to what he inherited, great. Now, you're right. Now he's got to build on it. But I don't think he's just about just showing off the watch and the cowboy hat. That's not the coach I saw at the podium post.
Well, he is a walking contradiction because I agree with you that everything he says is old school when he's talking about his team and how he handles players. But everything he shows is very new school, flashy. I'm all about me. I'm all about the money. Let's go make money together. Let's do that. It's very different in what he shows versus what he says. So that it's finding the balance of that and the right guy for the program. And maybe he found it this offseason. But I'm fascinated to watch how this transition to the Big 12 goes and how this experiment of I'm just going to get rid of everyone I don't like every year and bring in a bunch of other guys every year and see how that works.
That's good. It's
because Ole Miss is a good example,
Ole Miss
right?
is doing it.
Ole Miss, though, has a base, right? They still keep guys on the roster. They're going to return starters. on the defensive line or offensive linemen or veteran guys. And then they say, we had this one and done on the end of his career, so we're going to bring in 8 more one and dones.
But how many were one and done last year that came in? Like they're still retaining guys that they brought in.
There's a number of guys. Like Jackson Dart's a good example, somebody who stayed.
No, I'm saying that
came
Colorado.
in and stayed.
I'm saying that Colorado from last year. It's not like they had to replace guys that transferred in with him year one.
They've had to replace some, but some of the ones we know are back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that you were like, oh, wow, he's getting this guy, you know? So I'm comparing Deion and the whole aspect of NIL. Now go back to Caitlin Clark. Now she's surpassed Sheryl Sanders for the top NIL earner. That's great.
And good
That's
for
greatness.
Her. Good for her. If you're a young girl playing basketball, I mean, I would want
the ratings,
a Caitlin Clark jersey. So that makes sense.
Was it a million and a half tuned in to the performance of setting the record? Did I read that? Was it more than that?
I don't know. That sounds like a good number
for
a women's basketball game during the week.
That's what I would say, yeah. And that was a Google search yesterday we were talking about. But so Deion's very honest about it, though. Rick Pitino has also doubled down on his comments about St. John's and naming players specifically and their faults, their deficiencies, where he says, hey, I'm fine with what I said, is what Pitino has said in regards to the comments made, where he's, what do you say, that I'm the most unhappy, or this has been the most unfulfilling in my career?
I felt like I was trying to find a snuff film online to find the actual press conference of this. It was so difficult to find. I thought I had to go to the dark web to find Rick Pitino's actual press conference and not just quotes written out when he just lambasted his entire team and threw them all under the bus. I did see that today. In stories that were out today, to say that he doubled down saying, I'm fine with everything I said, Hutton, I did find that, here's the actual video. And here's what I found in watching the video and seeing Coach Pitino and hearing his voice and his voice inflection, everything. Dude was as cool as a cucumber. He was as calm as can be. He was not angry at all. He was just laying it out there for everyone to hear. He laid his soul bare for all of those Queens, New York reporters that were there in that room. He just said, look, this guy, he's slow laterally. He's just never going to be fast. This other guy, he tries hard. He's got great heart. He's also slow laterally. We got this other player who physically is not strong enough. We got this guy. He was very calm about it and very, very honest. I don't want to be a hypocrite on this show. I don't want to say one thing one day and then come back and say the complete opposite about the same thing. All right, so I'll say this. While I don't always like what the coach has to say when he's being honest, because I think at times it comes across as them being babies and not taking their own responsibility, I'm not going to crush Rick Pitino or Penny Hardaway or anyone else that does exactly what everyone in the media asks of our coaches, players, everyone that's involved in sports. What do we want more than anything else? We want you to be honest. We want you to give us something. Give us a soundbite. Tell us something. Tell us what you really think. Don't give us coach speak, right? Coach speak is a 4-letter word for the media because it's boring, because we can all expect it and none of us like it. So when a coach like Rick Pitino, someone that's been around the block as long as he has and had as much success as Coach Pitino has had, when he's willing to be honest to that level, even if it's about players on his team, and he's saying stuff I've told them many times. They all know this. Sometimes I say things that I want them to see also. This was one of them. When they're that honest, when Penny Hardaway is starting his comments by saying it effing sucks to lose like this is awful, the way we look out there, I'm here for it. I'm not going to crush these guys for being exactly what we want the media for them to be. Honest. Be honest. Tell us what you really think. Tell us what's going on with this team. Tell us about this player. Tell us why you've lost 8 out of 10 or why you lost by 40 points in this game. I'm totally fine with it. I'm not ever going to have any big objection to it. Now, we're going to comment on what exactly is said.
Yeah.
I don't think with Rick Pitino's thing it's really going to cost them that much because he really is pointing out physical limitations that, as he said the next day, these things aren't going to change magically in the next 2 weeks. So I'm fine with somebody being hurt over it or whatever. We're going to keep practicing to do the best we can with what we have. But it's not like me saying this is going to make this guy less laterally quick. It's basically his point. He's like, I'm just saying the truth about my team. I'm good with it.
He said that he truly wasn't ripping anybody. He says he stands by his choice of words. He also said, quote, and this is through Newsday, I was pointing out in a monotone voice why we lost. I'm not always calm and certainly not when I rip someone. I was not ripping anyone. I sometimes want my players to hear my words and read my words. That was my intention Sunday. And I'm fine with what I said.
I'm fine with it, too.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with him being honest. By the way, I do not look for snuff films online. I've just heard they're hard to find. Davey told me that they're really difficult to find. You got to go to the dark web. You got to have his password.
He calls them snoof films, not snuff films.
That's right. That's not the actual word that it said. That's what he told me.
But he sounds like snoof.
But he's got his own password on the dark web to find it. It really was hard to find any footage of that press conference. I was looking for it yesterday and could not find the actual raw footage of the press conference other than the written word. And then today I find it in the start of an article.
It's not hard to find those that are on the side of Reggie Miller and the comments that he made during the post three-point contest between Sabrina Ionescu and Steph Curry, where Kenny Smith made just an easy point and said, women's basketball, size of the basketball smaller, she should shoot from the WNBA the three-point line.
He said he wished he would have shot from her three-point line.
Yeah.
Almost saying he probably would have won had she done that. It was so close when she shot from there.
Yeah, I mean, because she could have easily won this competition with how she was performing anyway. And then, of course, Reggie Miller says, don't put boundaries. Don't listen to Kenny, Sabrina. Don't put boundaries on your game or yourself. And, of course, social media and the platform, everyone's jumping all over Kenny Smith.
You go, Reggie.
Yeah.
You go. Let me give you an imitation of what social media said after this. You go, girl. Reggie Miller, you go, girl. Do not put limitations on that young lady. How dare Kenny Smith talk about the three-point line being shorter or mention ladies' tees. Ladies' tees, schmadies' tees. You go, girl. That was social media. That was my impression.
And then it was either that or jumping on Kenny Smith.
Yeah.
How dare you
sexist.
You sexist commentator.
What is this, Mad Men? Is this the 1960s in an office somewhere?
Yeah.
Kenny Smith.
To which I say, if Kenny Smith is sexist about pointing out the women's three-point line, then the WNBA is sexist.
Yeah.
For having a shorter distance.
Women's basketball.
To the three.
The
women's basketball, the size of the women's basketball is sexist. He joined Stephen A. Smith on the Stephen A. Smith show, and, he stands by his comments. He should, because it's just pointing out the obvious, and also had to point out, look, I'm stating a fact. I'm not trying to be against women competing against men in the three-point contest, and I'm not sexist.
What is your thoughts about everything everybody is saying?
Yeah, I think it's much ado about nothing, Stephen, honestly. Most people who know basketball understood what I was talking about. Actually, I was advocating for her more than anything else because basketball is muscle memory.
Right.
So he practices from one range, she practices from the other. There's even a study, I think, with somebody throwing darts, the guy who throws darts.
Okay.
And if you move him out one step, his accuracy changes dramatically. But the funny thing about it, if you move him in one step, his accuracy changes because you take so many shots from the exact same thing. So I'm like, why is he getting the advantage to shoot at his line? That's an advantage. It's not gender, it's not genetic. It's an advantage. It's shooting is only muscle memory. And so that's what I didn't know people who don't, actually play the sport don't understand. It's all muscle memory. But the second part, I think when Reggie was joking about, so she should play with dolls. Because there was a comment, I think, that Sabrina, when she was younger,
right,
that someone said you should play dolls and stop. My thought, I have daughters. So my thought when I first heard that, I was like, what's wrong with that? You should play with dolls and you could do sports. So I actually said it.
Right.
You should play with dolls. And I screamed my daughter's names out. London, Kayla, you can play with dolls. But see, most people just don't check the tape. They want to just check the bait. You know what I mean?
And by the
so
way,
they want to have bait. My history and track record speaks for itself.
Yeah, props to Kenny Smith for what he said there and what he said on the broadcast earlier. Then you have Stephen A. who points out most people just don't check the tape. They just want to check the bait. And then he goes on to say that, the clickbait is just those that are looking for the hate reaction, looking into something. And, well, they got it with Reggie Miller jumping on board with the virtue signaling that was going on there.
Yeah, I thought Kenny Smith handled himself so well in that response and made so much sense that even I saw like Awful Announcing, who originally was pretty critical of him in their write-up about the back and forth with him and Reggie Miller, basically admitted, like, yeah, I think, people that jumped to one conclusion after hearing his explanation probably were wrong, that he's fine in what he's saying in his assessment. And maybe we rushed to judgment on what he was saying because of the way Reggie Miller reacted.
Well, but here's what part of the reaction is, as Stephen A. Smith points out, they're looking for clicks instead of doing anything else. I mean, if you have a headline that says Caitlin Clark should have used a WNBA basketball,
yeah,
right, or should have had the WNBA three-point line, which in this case was Kenny Smith's point. That who's clicking on that? She should shoot from the WNBA line,
right?
Oh, okay. If you have Kenny Smith is sexist for his comments about WNBA and Caitlin Clark, you get Reggie Miller's venting on behalf of everyone in America. You're getting the click on that. By the way, you're actually going to watch the NBA All-Star Weekend for the first time too.
Yeah, it did not cause me to watch it. I did watch the
clip of the contest.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't even know that I watched the clip. I just heard the audio of it back. But yeah, I mean it's a media business driven by clicks in some way. My issue becomes when almost it's not just I don't like the just purely manufactured. Like I feel like I'm hearing this person's opinion and it's not really their opinion. Right. They're siding with something they feel like they should side with because it's going to make them look better. The virtue signaling of Reggie Miller to me is a good example of that. Or some of the pieces I read about Kenny Smith in light of all this. I don't like that stuff. I also don't like that these pieces create a generation of people who are actually dumb enough to have a huge problem with what Kenny Smith said, right? These are two different things we're talking about. Like the side that's automatically going to crush Reggie Miller, all right? That's one thing, versus the side that's automatically, even if they don't fully believe it, going to crush Kenny Smith, but like what, we do it for bait and we don't check the tape. Those two sides, that's one thing. The other part of this that we don't talk enough about are the people that are tricked into being so stupid that they actually have an issue with what Kenny Smith had to say. And it's their legitimate opinion because they're trained to have that opinion.
That's group thing.
Because, they read whatever rag is out there that they get online with their algorithm that convinces them that if you try to put limits on any woman physically or any man physically, if you try to say a man can't have a child, then you are holding people back and you're putting boundaries on them, and that is wrong. Those people actually believe that, that's another issue that we're now facing.
There are two genders, Chad.
The two genders or the two realities or my truth is this true. There's truth. There are facts. There are truth. There are opinions about certain things, but there also are facts and truth.
No doubt.
And the fact is, women play with a smaller basketball, and they shoot closer from three. And that's the fact that Kenny Smith was bringing up. And also, I do like the comeback where Kenny Smith is like, well, what's wrong with playing with dolls? That's a good throwback to someone who's trying to virtue signal you. Oh, suddenly now playing with dolls is a bad thing? You got a problem with playing with dolls, Reggie? What's wrong with that? I have daughters. They play with dolls, and they can play sports.
Having Reggie answer the question of why the WNBA puts boundaries on their players with a smaller distance from three, shorter distance from three, and a smaller basketball. That I want to like that in live TNT. Like that would be amazing. Now you can't always have the perfect response on live especially with this, which is just an obvious point that Kenny Smith is making. But Chad, the other point is. I think a lot of times you just react to whatever the group is saying. And those that are not doing that, in many cases, edit themselves to whatever the group is saying or whatever, the social media platform is saying, which may or may not be true.
Yeah, they hold
which
back.
Is just as bad, by the way.
There's a lot of people who just hold back because they think like, oh, I know that Kenny Smith is right.
Right.
And Reggie Miller is wrong. but I can't say something positive
Just as
about Kenny
fake.
Smith or bad about Reggie Miller because then I'm going to be lumped in with this. Or if I do this, now I'm going to be lumped in with that, right? Just share your honest opinion. That's what we do on this show, and it's fine to do that about everything. Just share your honest opinion about
Chet,
these things.
this wasn't even just an opinion.
No, it's fact.
And it was, but, and
No, I'm saying, I'm not talking just to them. I'm saying to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, don't hold back because you think if I state this online or I do this, I'm going to be lumped in with this group. Or if I'm using my right and left hand. You could probably figure out what I'm talking about here. Or if I say this or do this or side with this person, I say one good thing about Aaron Rodgers, and then I'm going to be out with my friend group over here on social media, right? I'm using my left hand when I say that. Just give your honest opinion. And I think the world would be a much better place, and don't fear repercussions of that honest opinion. I'd like more, just like I talked about with coaches and players. Give me more genuine, honest reaction and opinion as opposed to what you think the groupthink wants you to say.